Shabbat Shalom, everyone. If you'll turn in your Siddur to page 128, we'll begin with a little bit of Shabbat music to help us welcome in Shabbat. We also want to say Shabbat Shalom to those of you who are with us on one of our virtual platforms, if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook Live or on templeshalom.com. Shabbat Shalom to all of you as well. Near the top of the page, not the very top of the page on 128, what a beautiful day it is today, this Shabbat of peace. Ma yafeh hayom, Shabbat Shalom. 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 Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Right below those words, the words of Yedid Nefesh, a poem that speaks of, it's a Shabbat love song, really, between God and the Jewish people. Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman, Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman, Mishoch Avdecha El Retzonecha, Mishoch Avdecha, La 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 El Retzonecha. Yarutz Avdecha Kemo Ayal Yishtachavei Lai 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 El Mul Hadarecha. Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman, Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman, Mishoch Avdecha El Ritzonecha, Mishoch Avdecha, La 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 El Ritzonecha. Yarutz Avdecha Kemo Ayal Yishtachavei Lai 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 El Mul Hadarecha. If you'll turn back just a few pages to page 120 in your Siddur. On page 120, we come to the blessing of our Shabbat candles as we light the lights. There's a custom that some of you probably know that says that as we light our Shabbat candles, we bring the light in, we wave our hands, and we cover our eyes. And I'm often asked, why do we cover our eyes when we say the blessing over the candles? And people say it's because we want to concentrate very deeply on the words of the blessing of welcoming in Shabbat. It sounds very lovely, but it's not the answer. It sounds like a lovely answer, but the answer is this. On Shabbat, we are told that we are not allowed to do 39 malachot, 39 tasks of work that were done in the building of the ancient tent of meeting and the temple in ancient times. And one of them is lighting a fire. So, Think about the logic with me here. Are you ready? You say a blessing, then you do a thing. You say the blessing, then you drink the. You say a blessing, then you eat the challah, right? You say a blessing, then you light the candles. Except that if once you say the blessing, Shabbat has started and you're no longer allowed to light the candles. And so, if you light them now, I cover my eyes, I say the blessing, and then I open my eyes to light them, and they're already lit. It's a Shabbat miracle. So on the one hand, it sounds a little silly. It's a little bit of a legal fiction. But on the other hand, if we just take that message into our souls and we say, every Shabbat begins with a Shabbat miracle. Isn't that a beautiful way to start Shabbat? And so I'll invite all of you to either look at the words on page 120 or to cover up your eyes as well so that we can say the blessing over our candles, and then we'll open our eyes and together we can experience that Shabbat miracle. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who makes us holy with your commandments and commands us to light the candles of Shabbat. On page 130, we come to Kabbalat Shabbat. This is a section of the service that's very new to the Jewish people. And by very new to the Jewish people, I mean it's only about 500 or 600 years old. So it's very new in Jewish history. The rabbis of that time period realized, as other rabbis had before, that sometimes we come to the synagogue and we're not ready for it to be Shabbat. We're worried about other stuff. Some of us are thinking about the thing that's sitting on our desk at the office. Some of us are thinking about that pile of laundry that's sitting next to the washing machine. Some of us are thinking about the assignment that our professor at UCCS gave to us that we're supposed to find out about other religious stuff, right? We all have a thing on our minds. And the thing on our mind is not Shabbat. But here we are, and the service is supposed to start. And so these rabbis 500, 600 years ago or so said, well, what if we add a little extra section before the real service starts that gets us kind of in the mood, in the proper mindset and the proper soul set for us to pray. And they added in these words from various psalms of praise, and those psalms begin on page 130. Lechu neranina, come let us sing joyfully to God. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina ladonai. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina ladonai. Naria, naria, litzur yishenu, nikadma fana bitoda. Naria, naria, litzur yishenu, bizmira naria lo. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina ladonai. Lechu neranina, lechu neranina, lechu neranina ladonai. On page 131, Psalm 196 says, Shiru Ladonai, sing to God, Shir Chadash, a new song. Shiru Ladonai, sing to God, Kol Haaretz, all the earth. The particular songwriter who wrote the melody that we're going to sing tonight took those two lines and flipped them over in reverse, but the idea is there. All the earth will sing to God a new song. Shiru Adonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Adonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Shiru Adonai, Shiru Shiru Adonai. Sing unto God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth, a new song unto God. Shiru la Adonai, Kol haaretz. Shiru la Adonai, Shir Chadash. As we turn to page 132, the last words of the Hebrew at the very bottom of the page, Or zaru alat tzaddik ul yishrei lev simcha. It's 4 lines from the bottom. Light is sown for those who are righteous, and for those who are straightforward of heart, there will be happiness. A lesson from the Psalms that tell us if we are righteous people and good-hearted people, then we are rewarded with light and with happiness. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Yishrei lev simcha. Here's the hard words. Lai 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 lai. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Now, some of you might have thought that I was making a joke when I said, here's the hard words. But I really meant that actually these are the hard words. Because sometimes when we pray, it's easy to engage in the keva. Keva is a Hebrew word that means fixed or affixed. And these words are affixed by a printing press, or a laser printer maybe in this case, onto the page. They were determined in some cases by rabbis long ago, in some cases by words of the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, like the words we just sang here. And they're fixed in place, they're fixed in time. And those are the words, and those words don't change. But sometimes it's harder to engage in the partner of kava, which is kavanah, which means intention, pointing our hearts in the direction of God. Sometimes it's easier to just, by rote, for those of us who know them well, recite the words on the page. And sometimes when we're not quite in that mindset yet, it can be a little bit harder to just sing lai, 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 and find the intention in our hearts behind the melody. So that's why I say maybe those are the harder words, trying to look into our hearts and pull out our own words that the melody brings to us. We continue with some words from Psalm 98. We read together in English at the bottom of page 133. A psalm. Sing to Adonai a new song, for God has worked wonders. God's right hand, God's holy arm has won God victory. Adonai has manifested God's victory, has displayed God's triumph in the sight of the nations. God was mindful of God's steadfast love and faithfulness toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. Raise a shout to Adonai, all the earth. Break into joyous songs of praise. We sing one of those joyous songs on page 135. It comes from Psalm 99. It's the last 3 words of the Hebrew. They translate as, exalt Adonai our God and bow down at God's holy mountain, for Adonai our God is holy. And if God is holy, then we, to emulate God and to bring ourselves closer to God, should make ourselves holy as well. Hold on to that thought, because a little bit later in our service, we're going to talk about that idea a little bit more. The last three lines of the Hebrew, Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Now, if you've been paying attention, you've seen that we started at Psalm 96. We went to Psalm 96, 97, 98, 99. So, of course, the next psalm is Psalm 29. Why is this the case? The case is this. All of those psalms in the 90s that are listed by numbers are psalms that the theme of those psalms are praises of God. Psalm 100, which would be the next one if we were going actually in order, it begins with the words Mizmor LeTodah, a psalm of thanksgiving. By the way, it's a wonderful psalm to read sitting at your dinner table on the last Thursday of November. It really puts you in the right mood for Thanksgiving. But the rabbi said, well, we're in a theme of praises of God. We'll find another one to be the final one of the psalms that we have that are praises of God. Psalm 29 is one of those praises of God for all of creation and God's power in the universe. We'll read together the psalm on page 136 and 137 in English, and then we'll sing the last couple of lines together in the Hebrew. A psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings. Ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name. Bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters. The God of glory thunders, Adonai over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Sirion like a young wild ox. The voice of Adonai kindles flames of fire. The voice of Adonai convulses the wilderness. Adonai convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Adonai causes hinds to calf and strips forest bare. When in God's temple all say glory. Adonai sat enthroned at the flood. Adonai sits enthroned sovereign forever. May Adonai grant strength to God's people. May Adonai bestow on God's people well-being. Those last two lines are also the last two lines of the Hebrew on 137. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Lai, 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 Adonai oz le'amo, yitain, yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai oz le'amo, yitain, yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. On page 138 and 139, we come to Lecha Dodi, the words of this beautiful Shabbat poem that speak of welcoming in the image of the Shabbat bride, as welcoming in Shabbat has the same beauty of welcoming in the bride during at the beginning of a wedding. And so we sing together the words at the top of page 138. We'll be singing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9 together. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei pnei Shabbat nikabela Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei pnei Shabbat nikabela la 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 Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei pnei Shabbat nikabela Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela Shamor v'zachor b'diburecha Ishmi anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem u'tiferet v'letchila la 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 Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'necha Ki hi mikor habracha Mirosh mikedem nesucha Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat chila la 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 Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Verse number 5. Hit'oreri Ki ba'oreh kumi Uri shir daberi Kivod Adonai alayich ni la 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 Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela. We rise, we face the door through which we entered as we join together in song number 5 or verse number 9 as we welcome in the image of the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala Gam b'simcha uv'tzola Toch emunei am segula Boi chala la 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 Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela la 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 Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nikabela. And before you sit down, I caught a couple of you. We just welcomed in the Shabbat bride. And as long as we're welcoming the Shabbat bride, we should welcome each other. So turn to the people around you and wish them Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And to those of you on camera, Shabbat Shalom to you as well. And now we can all be seated, now that we've greeted each other. It's wonderful tonight. We have such a mix of people that are here in the building. Thus, we have long-time members of Temple Shalom that have been members for, Anita, how many decades? 62 years members of Temple Shalom, going back a little ways. We have people here who've been members of Temple Shalom for, how many hours is it now since you filled out the form? 35 hours. So we have brand new members of Temple Shalom who are with us. We have students from 2 of the 3 major universities around town. We've got UCCS represented. We've got USAFA represented. Well, I'm sure there's going to be a Colorado College student coming any minute now. So we got all three of the major colleges here. And so welcome, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. We continue as we turn to page 140. On 140, we come to Psalm 92, the official psalm of Shabbat. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Let us sing a psalm of Shabbat as the Levites sang these words of the psalm in the ancient temple as well. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. It is good to give thanks to God. And the words continue from there. If you're not a Hebrew expert and you want to know what the psalm means, the translation's right there at the bottom of the page. But we sing together from Psalm 92. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Ulizamer l'shimcha elyon. Ulizamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Ulizamer l'shimcha elyon, ulizamer l'shimcha elyon. Lahagid b'boker chastecha, ve'emunatecha b'lilot. Alei asor ve'alei navel alei higayon b'chinor. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Ulizamer l'shimcha elyon, ulizamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simachtani Adonai, b'fo'olecha, b'ma'aseh yadecha aranim. Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai me'od. Amku machshvotecha. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Ulizamer l'shimcha elyon. Ulizamer l'shimcha elyon. Ulizamer l'shimcha elyon. Ulizamer l'shimcha elyon. We turn to page 144. As we make our way out of our Kabbalat Shabbat section and into our Ma'ariv service. Yitkadav yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Yalmad yivrach yerutev yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala, ba'agala, uvizman ka'arivim eru, amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach, Le'alam me'amaya yitbarach, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damihiron be'alma, v'yimeru, amen. As we turn to page 146, we rise for the Baruch Hu, our prayer, that our invitation in our RSVP, we might say, to our gathering together to pray. Lai 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 lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach Le'olam Ba'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach Le'olam Ba'ed. We can be seated as we turn to page 148 as we give thanks for the very first thing. The very first thing, of course, creation. So we read together in English, and then we'll sing a little bit at the end of the Hebrew. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzivaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. El Chai V'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'ma'ariv Aravim. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. We also give thanks for God's gift of Torah, for the lessons that are in its words. We say, Ki hem chayenu, we give thanks because they are our life. Ve'orech yameinu, and they are the length of our days. Ahavat olam, thanks for the gift of Torah and its lessons, page 150. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochvenu kumenu nasiach b'chukecha v'nitzmach b'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu ve'orech yaminu uvahem nehege yomam v'layla, nehege yomam v'layla. Ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Ohev amo Yisrael. Page 152 and 153, we join together in the words of Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha ve'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha V'hayu l'totafot beineinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvish arecha leman tiskeruhu v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem emet. On page 155, we read together in English. It's not an exact translation of the words we just chanted in Hebrew, but it's a more of a poetic translation of those words and what they mean. We read together. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children and talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai your God. And let me point out one more time that line that said, they are reminders to do all of my mitzvot so that you can be holy for God. Again, holy for God. Keep that thought in your mind, because in just a little bit, we'll talk about that a little bit more. We turn to page 157 as we come to the Geula, our prayer of redemption, our redemption from Egypt. I don't know about any of you, but it seems odd to me. Has it really only been a week since Pesach ended? It feels like it's been 3 months since Pesach ended, but it ended last Saturday night. How is that possible, right? So we read responsively as we are prepared to, when we come to page 158, sing the words our ancestors sang as they sang as the sea parted and they made their way from slavery to freedom. To get ourselves in the mood for those words, we read responsively at the bottom of 157. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nation will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing at the shores of the sea. As we turn to the top of 158, we sing those words of redemption that our ancestors sang so long ago. Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped in the world? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot, osei feleh, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot, osei feleh, osei feleh, malchutecha ra'u vanecha, Oki ayam lifni Moshe u'Miriam, Ze'eli anu ve'omru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Praised are you, Adonai, the one who redeems your people Israel. Each night, we ask God to lie us down in peace and cause us to rise again tomorrow to life, to protect us from enemy and illness and war as we sleep, and let us sleep through famine and sorrow and wrongdoing. We ask God to keep wrongdoing far from us and keep those who might harm us far from us. And we say, Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. God, spread a shelter of peace over us. It's a prayer written in the mid-800s. And really, it's for us, it's our religious lullaby, we might call it. Let us sleep through the night and be protected. We'll sing the first couple of lines at the very top, and then we make our way near the bottom of the page. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom. Third line of the prayer. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. The last three lines. Baruch ata Adonai hapori sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom. Turn to page 162. The people of Israel will keep Shabbat. Observing Shabbat through the ages is a covenant for all time. It's a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel, God said. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth. And on the seventh day, God ceased from the work. Just as we do now, God refreshed God's soul as we refresh our souls. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha'shabbat la'asot et ha'shabbat b'dorotam berit olam B'ni uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz Hashvi'i Shavat Shavat Vayinafah Shavat Shabbat vayinafash, v'shameru Shabbat. Shabbat vayinafash, v'shameru Shabbat. Shabbat vayinafash. As we turn to page 164, in just a moment we'll rise for the Amidah. Amidah means standing, because we stand for the prayer. We're not going to stand quite yet. I'll give you a second to relax for a moment. It's also called Hatfilah because it is the prayer, meaning it's the central prayer of the service. It's also called Shmona Esrei, which is the Hebrew word for the number 18, because during the week it's made up of 19 blessings. That's a different class. We'll do that on a different night. But at the beginning of the Amidah, there's 3 blessings that are praises of God. At the end of the Amidah, there are 3 blessings that are saying thank you to God, which leaves us with 13 in the middle to get to our 19 number. And those 13 are requests of God. So we praise God, we request from God, and then we thank God. But on Shabbat, we remove the middle 13 and add in a few paragraphs for Shabbat to give thanks for Shabbat. And so we'll sing the Zimun or the meditation on page 165, and then we'll turn to 164. We'll turn to 166 as we'll make our way through the first 3 paragraphs, those paragraphs of praise, and then we'll continue silently. Since I know we have some visitors and such, we'll tell you that this section of our service begins here on 164. It ends on 180 and 181. And the structure of the pages is this. There's the Hebrew of the prayer. You can look at 166 to see what I'm talking about here. On the right-hand side of the page, there's the Hebrew of the prayer. On the left-hand side, right next to the Hebrew, there's the transliteration or the Hebrew written in English characters. And then underneath it, there's a translation of the prayer. On the odd-numbered pages, 167, are not translation of the prayer, but poetic renditions of the themes of the prayer written by rabbis and cantors and poets and scholars. And so after we say the first few paragraphs together, we'll take time for our own silent prayer, whether you read the even-numbered pages or the odd-numbered pages, or you just find the prayers that you have written on the pages of your own heart, your own mind, and your own soul. And when you're finished with your personal Amidah, after we get to our silent section, when you're finished, you can be seated, and then we'll join together then. But now we begin together as we turn to page 164, as we all rise for our evening Amidah. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. 166. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chaste Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'nehem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah. 168. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah, Rav Lehoshia, Morid HaTa'al, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem emunato lishene afar michamocha ba'al givurot umido melach melech meimit umechaye umatmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman atah lachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai mechaye Kol 170. Ata kadosh u'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch ata Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh. We continue silently through 180, 181, or the prayers you find in your own heart and your own mind. When you're finished with your prayer, please be seated. Middle of page 180. Find words that come to us from Psalm 19. Yehiyu l'ratzon imrefi vehegyon libi lefanecha Adonai Tsuri v'goali Adonai Tzuri V'goli. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart, may they all be acceptable unto you, Adonai, my rock and my Redeemer. Adonai, my rock and my Redeemer. We turn our thoughts to those who are in need of healing. In our Siddur, we turn to page 371, right in the middle of the page. We ask for God to bring healing to all those who are in need. For those of you who are joining us virtually this evening, if you have a name of someone you're thinking of who is in need of healing, you can either say it out loud at home where you are or on whichever virtual platform you're using. You can type that name into the chat box and we'll include them in our prayers as well. For those of us that are here in the building, I'm going to read the list that I have, and then if any of you have names that you'd like to include for someone who's in need of healing, you can add them in just a moment. We ask for God to bring refuah shlema, complete healing, to Yishav Zaza, Carrie Schillinger, Robert Oppenheim, Carrie Sesser, Brian Zabel, Sylvia Chuk, Reuven Ben Sipora, Stephen Sharrow, Chaim Mordechai Ben Shmuel Yisaschar, Irene Lambert, Moshe Ben Avraham, Avram Ben Udul, Avraham Ben Meir, Ari Tzvi Ben Menachem Mendel V'chana, Ken Pepper, Stanley Sachs, John Sheck, Lee Miller, Steve Volin, Judy Bauman, Aviva Sara Bad Bailey, Wanda Frisky, Toby Sulka Bad Bela Rivka, Dr. Seth McKinney, Evan Burnett, Ellen McIntosh, John Redmond Palmer and William Redmond Palmer, Molly Delaney, Beverly Bellin, Calvin Waxman, Nee Howard, Yaakov Ben Moshe Halevi, Larry Ritterband, and Edith Ritterband. Are there any others who have names for healing? Go ahead, Robert. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any others? Yes. Thank you. Any others on this side of the room? Anyone for healing prayers on this side of the room? We also ask for healing for all those who are suffering from the COVID-19 virus. May they all find healing. Bimheira v'yameinu. May it come as quickly to all of them as is possible. As in the middle of page 371, we join together in a prayer of Misha Berach Lecholim, a prayer for healing. Misha Berach Avoteinu Mikor HaBracha Leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imoteinu mikor habracha leavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema. the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. This week we read from a section of the Torah that comes from the book of Leviticus. The portion is called Acharei Mot. It's a lot of laws. And in addition to that, it's also a lot of laws. In the section of Leviticus, we kind of take a little rest from the chronological story of our ancestors' journey through the desert and come to some legalism, some things that deal with sacrifices in the desert, and things that deal with holiday rules, and things that deal with relationship rules and economic rules, etc., etc. In our portion this week, as we read from the triennial section, it's the very beginning of what we're going to read tomorrow morning. The Torah tells us this. And as I say it, you're all going to know that it applies exactly what you do in your normal lives each and every day. When any person slaughters an ox, a goat, or a sheep, right? It's your everyday life, right? When any person slaughters an ox, a goat, or a sheep, and they do not bring it to the tent of meeting as an offering before God, there is a blood guilt upon them, and they shall be cut off from their people. It sounds very harsh, doesn't it? How many of you did not bring your goat this? Yeah. And so it leaves us with a question. And the question is this. There's no tent of meeting with a tabernacle, because it does say in there, it says, bring it to the tabernacle as an offering for God. We don't have a tent of meeting. We don't have a tabernacle. In replace of that, we're told that we take it to the temple in Jerusalem, which we also don't have a temple in Jerusalem. And we don't do sacrifices of an ox or a sheep or a goat. So it leaves us with a question. Why should I read this little portion of the Torah? And after that, why should I even care? Because I've never slaughtered an ox, a sheep, or a goat. I've never been to the tabernacle. I don't feel any blood guilt, and I don't think anybody is going to cut me off from my people because I didn't bring my ox to a thing in the desert that doesn't exist anymore. So why should I care? And the answer is, because it's important. That's why I should care. A few times in the service today, I've mentioned for you to remember what I tell you to remember. Holy. Be holy like God. We said it a few times in our service, and I pointed it out, and I said, remember, we're going to talk about that in a little while. That little while is now. What does this thing about slaughter an animal, bring it to the tabernacle, offer it before God, and if you don't do that, you're guilty and you'll be cut off from your people? What does that have to do with me in the year 2022? And the answer is everything. While I can't bring my ox or my goat or my sheep or any other animal that I'm going to eat to the tabernacle, I can do what we replaced that sacrifice with. The ancient sacrifice was replaced, as the Talmud explains it to us, tefillah bimkom korban. It means prayer instead of sacrifice. So that thing that I'm about to eat, I can actually bring it as a sacrifice. Now, the rabbis of old debate, is this only in relationship to when you're actually bringing one of the required sacrifices to the altar, or is this any animal that you're going to eat? If you take the Torah literally, it's any animal that you're going to eat. If you listen to 50% of the rabbis, it's only for the sacrifice. If you listen to the other 50% of the rabbis, it's any meal that you're going to eat. So the correct answer, of course, is one of those. But in modern times, we've replaced sacrifice with prayer. So when I have that ox or goat or sheep or chicken or whatever I ordered at the restaurant that I might be in, or whatever I took out of the fridge at home, whatever it may be, I actually can bring it to the altar, because the altar is no longer located in a tent in the middle of the desert. The altar is no longer located on a hill in the middle of Jerusalem. The altar is located right here and right here. Because when the ancient rabbis said the word heart, they meant the thing that's right here, and they also meant the thing that's right here. They thought that they were connected. And I know that biology says that in some ways they are. I mean, they're not directly connected, but biology says they're connected. And spirituality also says they're very much connected. And so I can bring that thing to the altar, because the altar is the soul and the mind and the essence of who I am. And the sacrifice is the sacrifice of the heart, the prayer that I give before I eat. It says that if I don't make the sacrifice, I'm guilty, and I will be cut off from my people. How does that work? Well, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, one of the third generation disciples of the Baal Shem Tov in the Hasidic world, he said this: if you eat an apple and you don't say a blessing before you eat the apple, you are a thief, because you stole that apple, and you stole it from God. But you also stole it from the farmer who planted the seed for that tree. And you also stole it from the person working in the fields who picked it from the tree. And you also stole it from the field worker who put it in the box. And you stole it from the truck driver who picked up the box and put it on the truck and drove it to the distribution house. And you stole it from all of the warehouse workers who then put it on a different truck. And then you stole it from the grocer who put it on the shelf at the store. And then you stole it from the cashier who checked you out when you walked out of the store. You get the picture. God was involved in you getting that apple. And a lot of other people were involved in you getting that apple. And if you don't say thank you for that apple, you stole that apple. Do you have to say the official blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'etz? Thank you, God of the universe, who created the fruit of the trees. The Talmud says, not really. There's a story in the Talmud. It's of the shepherd boy, and he says, actually not in Hebrew, but in Aramaic, he says, blessed is the master of this bread, and then he ate. And the rabbis say, he didn't say God's name in the blessing. It's not a correct blessing. And another rabbi said, but he intended for God to be part of the blessing. It was in his heart, and therefore it counts. And it's not just about food. It's about everything that we do. If before we do something we say a blessing, because saying that blessing when we eat, it raises the level of holiness, right? If I throw some food on the floor right over here, and I call Milton, if you don't know who Milton is, he's the caretaker for Temple Shalom, and he has this little dog named Curly. Curly's like this big, right? And he has little curly hair all over him. Curly would run in and slop up the food without thinking about anything. Curly wouldn't say a blessing. But we can say a blessing, giving thanks to God and giving thanks to the rest of our fellow humans for the food that we have. It makes our act of eating into something that's holy. If we take a moment before we do anything to raise that thing that we will do to a level of holiness, we change the entire world. If we said a blessing, thank you, God, for having me talk to this person who's different than I am. There actually is a blessing in Hebrew for that, blessing someone who's different than I am. If we said that blessing before we talked to that person, how much do we lessen the chances that we're going to say something not kind to that person? If I say, thank you, God, for giving me whatever it is that I have, not just food, but some other thing, what are the chances that we might take a moment to think of who helped get that thing to me so that my life is a little bit better? If before we take any action in our lives, if we stop and make that sacrifice of the heart, which today we call prayer, and we say a prayer of thanksgiving for the thing that we have, or a prayer for guidance for the thing that we are about to do, how much can we change the world? Because if we say that prayer before we eat, before we do something, we raise the level of what we're about to do to a level of holiness. And if everyone in the world raised every one of their actions to a level of holiness, what a beautiful world we would live in. I pray that for each one of us who are imperfect as humans can be, that we'll take that idea and try it. Even if we don't do it every single time, even if we can add one blessing that we wouldn't have said before thinking about it, we make the world one little morsel better than it was before we said that blessing and then acted. May this truly be the world in which we all get to live. Amen. We come to the closing prayers of our service as we turn in our Siddur to page 586, the bottom paragraph on 586, as we rise for the words of Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liyotzeh bereshit, shelo asanu kogoye ha'aratzot, v'lo samanu kimishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishlachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, page 588. Shehu note shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim ima'al, u'shchinatu zo b'govei meromim, hu Eloheinu ein od, emet malkeinu efes ulato, Kagatu b'torato, v'yadata hayom v'hashivota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim ima'al, ve'al haaretz, mitachat ein od, the middle of 590. Ki ha'malchut shelcha hi u'lameatim loch b'chavod, Kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed, v'ne'emar, v'ya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, Echad u'shemo echad. We can all be seated. We turn our thoughts to those who have died at this season in years gone by. In our yard site, in our memorial this week, we recall the memories of Annie Gritz, Charles Clark, Louis Silverstein, Shirley Burson, Abraham Nazar, Bella Albert, Carol Miller, Elizabeth Karnick, Abraham Ganetsky, Dora Levine, James Trent, Abraham Fleischer, Daniel Goldstein, Harry Guth, Thomas Marshall, Aaron Solomon, Irving Harris, Ann Pfeffer Shea, Esther Levy, Faye Thorner, Irving Bartner, Miriam Silverman, Rose Weisler, Archie Lewides, Ellis Hanwitt, Eugene Finkelstein, Sam Nash, Iris Lewides, Samuel Cohen. We also note the passing Wednesday evening of Marvin Straight. Marvin's funeral will be on Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. here at Temple Shalom, with burial to follow at B'nai Jacob Cemetery in Pueblo. Again, the funeral will be 1 o'clock here at Temple Shalom. Are there any other yard sites that anyone is observing, Robert? Thank you. Any others? Yihyu zichronam livracha, may their memories be an eternal blessing. We ask mourners to rise and those whose custom it is to stand by their side. As we turn in our Siddur to page 598, as in their memory, we sanctify God's name. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, be'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizban kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudasha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, t'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, huyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. We can all be seated. We're going to invite Robert Grossman, our temple president, to share some announcements with us. And Robert, while you're coming up, because I saw some looks of discomfort among some of our students, if you stood up for that last prayer, you did the right thing. If you sat down for that last prayer, you did the right thing. So whether you were standing or if you were in between, you might have been wrong. But if you were sitting or standing, those are both customs during that prayer. So whichever one you did, you're good. Robert.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. There are a few faces that maybe have never seen mine before, that I haven't seen yours, so please take a moment to introduce yourself before you leave, after we have Motzi and Kiddush in the background. Rabbi, thank you very much for leading our services this evening. A special Todah Rabbah to everybody who attended to help make our service. We welcome our visiting UCCS students. Thank you for coming and joining us. Happy to answer any questions that you have afterwards.
And our visiting United States Air Force Academy student.
Oh, yes. Also, on Sunday, May 1st, this coming Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. will be the funeral service for Marvin Strait, as Rabbi just mentioned. The service will be led by Rabbi. Seating will begin at 12:30. Our countering active threat training, CAT training, has landed on this coming Sunday as well, 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., right here in Temple Shalom. Please register online. Essentially what this means, this is a training for us, the members of this community. If you can attend, please attend. Basically, if somebody were to come into our building and attack us, it teaches us what we should do in order to remain safe. And it's something that I think all of us should take a moment or two and participate in. On Thursday, May 5th, 6:30 to 7:45 is Rabbi's Kitchen with Rabbi Jay. This time it's Israeli dinner, falafel, hummus, and pita. All of my favorite stuff when I lived there. Learn how to have a taste of Israel at home. Sign up online at Temple Shalom to get all the attendance information. Sign up for the semi-annual congregational meeting online at Temple Shalom. Sunday, May 15th, about 9:30, there'll be breakfast with the board. Call to order for the meeting is 10 o'clock. The official meeting invitation will show up where you normally get your mail very soon, and will include the November 2021 minutes, the slate of nominees, and the agenda for the meeting. There may be more in that envelope, so be sure to open it up and look inside. Please try to attend. It's very important. We have a quorum because there are decisions that need to be made and things to be voted upon, and oh boy, I get to make the presentation. If you know of any temple members who are ill or hospitalized or suffering from a loss, please contact the temple office so we can make sure we're there for everybody. Thanks to Temple Shalom for our Oneg this evening. If you'd like to sponsor an Oneg for any time, please contact the office.